presentation and for your letter. Yeah. Cool. So we have Kath Handley can't be here yet from the Waiheke Local Board. She will speak at the item on the consultation of hard to recycle plastics and single-use items later on in the day. But now we will have Chair John Gillen from Kaipātiki Local Board to present. So that's the finishing of public forum, and now we're in the local board input section. So thank you. And after the local board input, we will be taking a short break.
Kia ora. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Committee, for having us here today. I'm John Gillen, Chair of the Kaipātiki Local Board, and I have with me here Victoria Short, Deputy Chair of the Hibiscus and Bays Local Board, and John Turner from the Puka Te Papa Local Board. And apologies for Deputy Chair Danielle Grant of Kaipātiki, who couldn't make it here today, which is a shame because her family are beekeepers and she would have had a lot to say on that. Before I start properly, can I just check, has the local board...
Can I just to check, so we've only had requests from John. Is everyone speaking, or is there a request? Or okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I start, can I just confirm, has the feedback of the 21 local boards actually been distributed to all committee members? Because in the report is only a summary of the feedback, and the wording of feedback is carefully selected, debated and adopted at board meetings, and I'd be a bit concerned if you hadn't seen it. So could I please have an answer to that before I continue?
It was sent to us originally and through the local board workshop, but it's not on the agenda, which I would have preferred, but it is not there.
Okay, so it has been seen.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have a copy because I requested it. My understanding is that councillors have not received the individual feedback from the local boards. The item in the agenda, however, does contain a very brief summary. That is my understanding. I could be wrong.
So Emax will confirm if that came to us. I thought it did through the workshop, but maybe it was in that high-level description. So we'll get that circulated if possible now.
Thank you. And if it could be taken on board, please, in these sort of circumstances, if local feedback could be included in the agenda, because I mean, the public also haven't had the opportunity to find it unless they search for 21 individual minutes from across the board. Can I please have my time reset? Thank you. So we are here today because we are very concerned about the quality of the agenda report and the lack of information in certain areas, and it is not showing the complete picture, and you've heard a lot of that today already. We urge the committee to not adopt the recommendations to standardise the methodology used for weed control in our road corridors across Auckland, and I'm going to touch on a number of reasons why. For over 20 years and perhaps 30 years, the North Shore area and part of central Auckland has used alternatives to agrochemical control in our road corridors. We have used hot water or foam or mechanical methods, with chemicals only being used sparingly through the spot application on specific weed species. Our roads and pathways have effectively been chemical-free for decades, but that didn't happen by accident. It was a result of enormous public pressure from protests, public meetings, newspaper headlines and medical evidence presented to councillors from adversely affected people. Yet I can't find anything in the report on the health impacts or on the background or context on why the Northern and Central Board areas use alternative methods. This is really important to understand before it is taken away from us, because we could very well have history repeated on us. Now, when the Super City was created, it established 21 local boards to ensure that local views were not lost and homogenised. Variation between the local board areas was expected and encouraged by the creation of local boards. And yet the proposal in front of us is to actually override local variation decision-making and impose a regional methodology by default. There's nothing wrong with local variation, and we already have it, and it should be supported. And I'll come back to this in a moment. Recommendation A on the agenda, and I acknowledge that may be changing later, but what's in front of us, Recommendation A, refers to achieving equitable weed management through standardisation of methodologies. I assume from reading the report that equity in this instance refers to budget, because all parts of Auckland currently do achieve equity in the service. We're all getting weeds removed, just different methodologies are being used. So if we're talking about equity of budget, and I can't find anything in the report about the total budget overall or the proposed new budget per local board area. I can only find that it is cost neutral overall, which I guess is because funding will be taken from the northern areas and redistributed elsewhere. I also understand that Waka Katohi NZTA subsidises weed control in the road corridor, but I can't find reference to that in the report at all. And it isn't clear if this is reflected in the different costs of the different methodologies per kilometre. Now, if this proposal is accepted today, then a regional level of service will be implemented that is lower level of service than the northern area has had for decades. The option given in the report that any local board that wants a higher level of service than the new low level of service will need to find a difference from elsewhere. However, I know that Kaipariki local board's LDI OPEX is very tight and could well be reduced next financial year due to the situation in the economic situation we're in at the moment, and we could not realistically afford it. We have the option of introducing a targeted rate, which is mentioned in the report, but it would effectively be asking the community to pay additional money for a service that they've already been receiving for decades, and that will not go down well with the community. We will actually have no viable choice but to accept the lower standard of service, which brings me back to local decision making. We are having the rug pulled out from under us and being forced to accept a set methodology and lower service level. Now, I have a letter here, which I believe will be tabled later on today, from Metro Care, which is a former contractor to the north and west areas. And they say that they can achieve a thermal method using rainwater or grey water and carbon neutral, and they cost approximately $852 per kilometre, which is cheaper than most of the prices quoted in the report. So I don't understand where this inconsistency is coming from. Perhaps they were a subcontractor and we were paying a higher rate to a contractor who then employed them, so someone's creaming it. But we are able to achieve cheaper costs here. And if that's possible, then we should be able to offer that across Auckland. Now, lastly, I will put to this committee, and it has been raised already, that this proposal is inconsistent with the 2013 Auckland Council Weed Management Policy for Parks and Open Spaces. The policy supports minimising agrochemical use, not reducing, but minimising. It recognises that, and quote, agrochemicals can be harmful to human health and the environment. It also states, and I quote, the simplest way of achieving an overall reduction in agrochemical use is through restrictions on the application of chemicals in specific areas or at specific times, which is what we are achieving in my local board area, these guys' local board areas as well. If this proposal were to be adopted as it stands, we would be seeing an overnight increase in agrochemical use in our road corridors, not a minimisation. We would be moving away from the weed management policy. That's all I have to say. I'd just like to check whether Victoria and John would like to add anything to that.
Your 5 minutes is up. If you have a brief...
I'm happy to move an
I'm happy
extension
to
of 5 minutes.
second an extension of time.
So a couple minutes extra. We don't need to move it, but if either of you would like to speak as well.
So in the Hibiscus and Bays local board area, we use the thermal method, and I don't want to see that go. You know, we have children walking to school every day, and as you all know, AT are encouraging children to walk to school, use the walking school bus, and I think you guys are doing the walking challenge as well. So, you know, why can't we make sure that these streets that these kids are walking in are safe and that they're being tested chemically? I just don't think a blanket solution is the way forward. In fact, I think we're going backwards.
Kia ora koutou. For the Puki Tāpapa local board, the public feedback from the People's Panel was strongly against using glyphosate in our area. We see a change to using synthetic herbicides would be a reduction in service levels. And one thing that's coming up is the governance framework review, which would be looking at changing how local boards are funded. And so I think saddling us with something like this before we do that is possibly a step too far. So that would be our position.
Thank you very much. Cool. If we could get... Oh, so you have more questions. We have Watson, then we have Councillor Philippina and Walker, and then Councillor Newman. So Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, local board spokespeople. John, and I've got your local board agenda here. during the consultation process for the thermal technology that you're familiar with, I see that the quoted cost is $3,485 per kilometre. You've mentioned one company that is, by all accounts, under $1,000. Would it surprise you to know that there is actually other thermal companies that quoted costs that are a third to a half of that quoted cost that you were consulted on?
Well, that is actually, in some ways I'm surprised, in some ways I'm not. I mean, that information should be in the agenda if that is correct, and I know that from what information I've got in front of me, that is correct for at least one company. So I don't understand why we're not seeing that information, why you are not seeing that information before you make this decision.
Okay, just a very quick follow-up, Mr. Chair. In terms of this information that went to local boards, were local boards made aware of the exact nature of the NZTA subsidy, which in some years extends to $4.4 million a year for weed and vegetation control?
No, that was not mentioned at all. I only found out about that very recently.
Finally, were you made aware of the path to carbon zero from one of the companies? Was that made aware to you that one of the thermal companies has got a path to carbon zero?
No, again, I only found out about that very recently. It wasn't presented to us.
Right. Would appear the local boards didn't get told a lot of things.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Filipaina, online.
Tēnā koe and tēnā koutou katoa. Look, just a question. I've got two very short ones. The first one is, I'll be interested, John, to find out what your thoughts are about having a regional approach, so then at least we have a standard. So that's one question, and then I've got another one after that, John.
So the issue with the regional approach is what methodology is selected. We don't want to change the methodology we're currently using. And also the budget. It's not clear what the budget will be. So if we have a regional approach but our budget is reduced and we can't afford to maintain what we currently have, then I absolutely would be opposed to that. And our local board does have a resolution opposing a regional approach because of that. If, however, as we're discovering that there are cheaper ways of obtaining a chemical-free methodology, and council is able to roll that out across the board, then that would be beneficial for everyone. So I'd be supportive of that.
And just last question, John. So, I mean, I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are about South Auckland at this stage subsidising the shore in regards to the weed management.
So the South is not subsidising the shore. The South is being hard done by council by not being paid enough, not having enough money allocated to it at the moment to be able to achieve a decent level of service. That doesn't mean that the North should not have the level of service it currently has.
Yeah, that statement's a bit misleading, but Chair, I'll wait for the item.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Filipaina. Sorry. Councillor Walker.
Sure. So I'm assuming you've read the agenda item, John. The agenda item covers off budget, but does it give you any indication of what the budget is available for your local board and any local board across the region? That's the budget available.
No, I could not find that in the report, Councillor Walker.
Okay, fine. So we have no idea of what the budget is available. Secondly, can you confirm that hot water was used successfully in the Northwest contract that includes the total area of your local board, which is Kaipatiki, and also the total area of Upper Harbour, and that it was used successfully and it met the outcomes for some years?
Yes, absolutely, for decades. And just noting, as I mentioned, that particular hard species of weed do get spot application of glyphosate. So that is acceptable in certain circumstances. But for the majority of it, it is hot water, or in some of the northern areas, foam. Sure.
And then my last question is, can you confirm that in the information that was provided to local boards under Project Streetscape, there were a number of figures, amongst which was the figure for the combined methodology of $1,293 at that point in time, and now it's reduced to $1,050. a drop of approximately 19%. Have you had any explanation as to why that is the case? Because that was what you were consulted on and you gave feedback on before. Any explanation on that?
No, I'm surprised to see that the figures in today's report differ to what we were presented with.
So is it possible that there could be a substantial change in the budget and maybe we need to know about that?
I've got no idea what the budget is, but you could be correct.
I have no idea either, but I'm sure the other councillors have no idea too. Thank you very much, Mr Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Newman.
Chair, I just wonder, I know you're going to call a break shortly. In the report that we got coming up, I have to be in reliance of paras 45 and 46 and table 3 for a summary of local board feedback. Based on what I'm hearing today, I'm wondering if during the break a full summary or a full statement of what the local boards actually said to inform this table could be photocopied and circulated to all councillors, or at least to me. I would like the information. I presume others would as well, but I would like to get a copy of that for my consideration of item 8. If that could be arranged during the break, I'd be grateful.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Member Wilcox.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Newman, I have been told that it was circulated to us at the workshop, but I'm asking if it can be done again before we have the item. Okay, cool. Member Wilcox, sorry.
So when we did the glyphosate thing, the chemical thing back in the 90s, wasn't it? Was it 90s? I know whānau from the coach and also from Beachhaven were quite involved in that. So are they still supportive of the hot water as opposed to the chemical? And I suppose what do Māori in general have said about that, because they were quite supportive. I remember Auntie Pam had been quite supportive in that kaupapa at that time.
My understanding is yes, there's not an appetite to move. Of course, that's going to vary from person to person, but yes, my understanding is that there is a desire to stick with the hot water, or at least non-chemical method of weed removal from the road corridor.
Yes, so have you kind of talked to any of our whānau out there, or have we got any feedback from our whānau, or is this just kind of just being taken for granted? Because I know they did really support the hot water kaupapa. I'm just trying to understand, did they, at Kaipātiki, are they still in support, and have we tested that?
My understanding is that they're still in support, yes. I have not gone back to them recently to check that.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Thanks, Chair. Just wanted to pick your brains on your thoughts on this table here under paragraph 46. So, by my calculation, under this report, if this were to be adopted, 850,000 people in our city would have less glyphosate use, and 150,000 more would have no change, leading to a service level of about 1 million people in our city that have the same or less. So, what are your thoughts on that, and what should we do about it if we didn't adopt this report?
So my personal opinion is that council should find a method that is both cost effective, as we've heard there are cost effective methods, and to minimise the amount of glyphosate being used across Auckland in line with your weed management policy.
Sorry, and just to follow up, so you would accept that this report does or does not minimise glyphosate across the city?
There is a minor change to some areas, yes, but in the northern areas and the areas that we represent here, no, there would be an increase.
Thank you. No more questions. Oh, sorry.
Just a question of
No,
Victoria
Councillor-
Short.
No, Councillor Walker, you've already had your
I was not asking the question of John Gillen, a very short question of Victoria Short, if I may.
very short, but we are well over time.
So, in this report, is there any indication of the pathway for a local board to go glyphosate free? That is, how it would actually do it?
Not that I can see.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Could I please have a mover for Councillor Collins, Councillor Fletcher? happy to swap those names if that's okay, if you'd like to move. So Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Collins, all those in favour? Aye. And thank you very much, local board members, and you're welcome to stay as long as you like. We're going to have a...
Thank you.
Oh, so there's no extraordinary business? I don't need to move that, do I? No. Cool, thank you. We're going to have a 5-minute break, so 12:01 we'll come back. Thank you.